Hello, and a big welcome to Tricia Murray, who is with us today. She's an anxiety coach, a business mentor, and you support women to release all the stuff that's going on in your head so that you can thrive and be fulfilled. And you've trained in a number of modalities and also an advanced EFT practitioner. And you live in Edinburgh with your 4 sons. Wow. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so appreciative of you taking time out of your very busy day, I'm sure, to be with us. So you've been an EFT practitioner for a while now. I know you're very experienced. How did you get into EFT?
Well, firstly, thanks very much, Tamara, for inviting me. It feels like an honour to be here with you. So thank you very much for inviting me. So how did I first get into EFT? So I had 3 children that were 22 months apart. So they're much older now. Like the twins are just turned 14, and then my third son's about to turn 12. And as part of that whole experience, I ended up having what I describe as like a nervous breakdown, which is exactly what it was. My whole nervous system was just like, that's enough. That is enough. You're dealing with enough. And as part of that recovery, I came across one of my friends gave me the book, The Tapping Solution. And it was, as part of that recovery, that was the book that actually really helped. Because in between like going for CBT, which is what I was doing at the time, it was something that I could use in the moment to really help me to feel, oh, is that okay? It's sort of a bit funny. So in that moment, it gave me the tool that I could use in my family to really support me to feel much calmer. And I couldn't believe how this weird looking thing just really helped me to be able to manage everything so much better.
Oh, amazing. So I know that you said that it helps with meal times in particular. Can you say a little bit more about that?
I think for me, mealtime's probably the worst time of the day. So mealtimes were the time like where I'd really lose it, where I'd lose my temper, where I felt really frazzled and I felt really freed. And I just felt like everything was everything just became really overwhelming. So that was the time. So it was like, even though I've got dinner to make, I'm okay. Like, and even though the kids are screaming at me, I'm okay. And it was just really simple tapping that I would do. So, even though I'm feeling really stressed, even though I don't know what we're going to eat, even though I feel really angry that it's always me that has to make dinner, even though I feel like the burden of responsibility for making dinner, like, I'm okay. Like, I'll get through this. It will be okay. Like, I am okay. And I think just that really simple tapping and that really simple moment of reassurance to myself, I think that's one of the things that was so helpful was, yes, the tapping, but also being able to reassure myself in that moment that I was okay. Just changed everything.
That's incredible. And did you notice it had an impact on your children as well, or was it just that you were much better able to hold the space for them as they were doing whatever they were doing?
Probably it did make a difference because obviously I wasn't so shouty, so it would have made a big difference in our home. But I think also just really the knock-on impact of that, if you feel really overwhelmed at dinner time, then by the time you get to bedtime, like, you're all really frazzled and you're all it just sort of builds, isn't it? It sort of builds momentum. That stress builds momentum. So I think what was really lovely is being able to, and it doesn't mean it was perfect. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just picked up a book. Doesn't mean it was perfect, but it was just something that just made everything easier. I remember giving it to one of my friends. She was going through fertility, and I was like, "Get this book; it's so good." It's like a secret going around us. But I think it was, it just stopped the momentum building. The momentum went a different direction, didn't it? Because the momentum moved away from that stress to moving much more into a place of being able to cope and be able and a place to be able to manage. So it just made everything much easier.
Amazing. And I think what's so beautiful about EFT, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just you can't get it wrong. Whatever you do, it's going to be better than if you don't do it.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think that's the power of it. So for any one of you watching, if you're thinking, I don't know how to do it, I don't know where to get started, just do it. Just do something. Just tap on the side of your hand and take some deep breaths if you don't know what to do. And, you know, you can just like talk and tap and like, I just, you know, mealtimes are driving me crazy. I just don't know how to cope with it. I can't believe I'm the one who's always having to do this. And whatever, just talk. It's like having a tapping rant. I always call it a tapping rant. And just let that happen.
Yeah.
So,
and I think so much of it is just that reassurance to yourself, like, I'm okay. Like, yeah, I'm really struggling, but I actually am okay. Like, I'm going to get through this. It's going to be okay. And I think it's that thing that sometimes you need somebody to say to you, do you know what? This is tough, but you're going to be okay. Like, you are going to be okay. And I think sometimes when you're in those moments, you don't feel like you're ever going to be okay. Like, you just don't feel like it's ever going to end or it's ever going to be okay. And I think that's the really beauty of EFT is in whatever way it works, whether it's the simulation points, whether it's a distraction, whether it's a reassurance. I don't really think it matters. Like, I think it's just whatever it is, it just works, you know, and I think that's the real beauty of it. And you can tap as you're moving. You don't have to sit, you know, the thing with meditation or using other approaches is you kind of need to sort of sit in silence. Whereas when you've got so many children, you know, there is no silence, you know, so it's happened. But, you know, I'll often tap in the car. You know, I've got a half-hour drive each way to the school and back, and I will quite often you know, tap a lot of the time, you know, from driving as I'm thinking about stuff. And I find it such a, like, it just changes everything for me.
As an EFT trainer, I can't recommend that, but yes, I know it's fantastic. You always have to make sure you're safe in the car.
Yes, I would. Yes. But even thinking about the points that you'd be tapping at, you know, is really, really, really powerful. But I just find that really powerful. You know, even now, you know, it's the thing that'll take me out of my thoughts and will take me much more into action or much more into my body or much more into like thinking in a different way. So
that's what I love about it. The way it makes you see things differently, like these cognitive shifts. So that's also what's so amazing. So I know that you've experienced a lot of stress with fussy eating and anxiety around meal times and things like that, either from your own personal experience or from the people that you've worked on. What would you recommend? What kind of things would you recommend?
for our meal times.
Yeah, or what would you say the challenges are? First of all, let's
For meal times.
yeah.
I think it's multi-layered. You know, that's the thing is we think, you know, it's like a big sticky web, isn't it? You know, the thing is sticky web is meal times, but actually there's many different strands to it. And I think the strands are, strand one would be probably the exhaustion, the energy. I think strand two is the weight of responsibility and the weight of responsibility to get it right. You know, we're trained to be good mums. So good mum feeds her children in a very specific way. And I remember in CBT and she was like, it's okay to give your kids beans on toast. And I was like, is it really okay to give your kids beans on toast for dinner? Like, and really having to come round to actually, yeah, it's totally fine to give your kids beans on toast for dinner. You know, it's fine. It doesn't mean you're a bad mum because you're giving them beans on toast. So I think it's like something around like the weight of the responsibility, but also the weight of perfection.
Oh yes, the weight of perfection. I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah. And then I think it's like I felt a lot of anger towards my husband. I was like, how does he, you know, my husband would go to work at, you know, 7:45 in the morning and then he'd come back at 6:15 at night. And I had dealt with all the juggle. And even when I went back to work, I was still dealing with all the like tail ends of picking up and dropping off. And I was like, how does he get away with not having to do this? So, you know, the sort of like the resentment and the anger towards, you know, and I think just I think it's like the catastrophic sort of thoughts, like, oh, if I don't get dinner on time, dinner on the table on time, it's going to mean I'm not going to get to bed in time, and then I'm going to be tired. And it's like, it's the, your mind starts to go away with you, doesn't it? As well, that's the thing, is we think it's stressful meal times, but actually it's there's all these different strands involved. I wrote down some notes. So resentment. I wrote down a word that I can't read. But I was just trying to think what that word was, because I think it's actually quite an important word. But I think it's all these different. It's all these different things. It's the energy. It's the kids screaming at you. The kids are tired. It's 5 or 6 o'clock at night. They're tired.
Yeah. I think one thing to pick up on from what you said is that when your husband goes to work and he doesn't deal with it, it's not just the fact that you're dealing with it, it's also the thought process that goes into the planning, which I think often, and maybe I'm generalizing here, often the partners don't actually realize the amount of thought process that goes on behind the scenes in order to make everything tick over, which in itself can be quite exhausting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got everything's much like everything's shifted, and I think even more so since lockdown. I mean, everything was shifting anyhow, but I think even more so since lockdown that like anyway, personally it's not perfect. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but I think it is shifted in a much better direction. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, but yeah, no, I think that is so true. It's all the thinking.
Yeah.
It's making sure you've got everything in to be able to make whatever perfect meal it is that you want to make that night.
Absolutely. So if anyone's watching, if anything's come up for you as we've been chatting, because we've actually covered a lot of mum stress, frazzledness, that, and it's funny how it all kind of comes together in this mealtime situation where all these different challenges can really be there. So if you wanted to type anything in the comments, we could build that in. Also, so from your experience or your client's experience, what could we do the tapping on? What kind of, out of everything you've said, or should we just do some general tapping over everything you've said? What feels right for you?
I suppose I think one of the biggest things is that catastrophic thinking.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thinking that's like, if I don't get dinner on the table on time, that's going to mean that the kids are going to go to bed late. Everything's going to be late, and it's going to be like some mega disaster. It's that thinking. I think and that goes into all sorts of different areas. Like, if you've got a new baby, it's like you're worried about nap times and schedules. It's the same if your kids don't get up time in the morning, like we get to nursery on time. It's all of that catastrophic, thinking that we have that's going to mean some big disaster, rather than just saying, well, do you know what? They're just going to be late. They'll be late to bed. They're going to be late to nursery, late to school. It doesn't mean anything apart from it's going to be late, but yet we, for some reason, give it a huge weight. We give it a huge weight that they're going to be in bed late, or to nursery, or late, or whatever it is, that we give it some meaning that it doesn't actually have to take on.
Yeah. I think that's a really good thing to work on. So as you're watching this, for those of you watching, thinking about this whole catastrophizing and thinking, if I don't get this done, then this won't happen, and then this won't happen, and then this won't happen. And just like you've described, getting that meal on time, on the table, getting it finished and tidied away, getting bedtime done, so they fall asleep on time, so they wake up on time, so they get to school on time. And if that doesn't happen, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
So again, you can type that in the chat if anything comes to you. And notice the emotions as we're talking about this. I mean, just talking about it can kind of bring up emotion, can't it? Because it just is so. Hi, Bonita. Expectations of having all members sitting at the table at the same time, disappointed when meal planned, but one child in teens chooses not to come to the table. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you. That's a really useful one. And
expectations versus reality, isn't it? We expect something to happen, and then the expectation is here, then the reality is here, and it's that gap between the two that we really struggle with, and it's like a lot of our perfectionism is about, it's a perfectionism about what is it we're eating or how mealtime should be, that it brings up all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And generally what it boils down to more often than not is that I'm not a good enough mum, I'm not good enough, I've got it wrong, I can't get it right, I'm a failure. And that's what it all boils down to. And then we have to start thinking about where those feelings come from, because they never come from the mealtime. The mealtime is just kind of like the trigger, but it wasn't what caused the problem. The problem, as you know, as I know, happened way back then. And we're not going to tap on way back then today, but we can just acknowledge that it happened from whatever happened back then. How are we parented? How are meal times for us? And all that feeds into our own parenting. So I think we've got loads of material here. Like, where do we start? Let's solve the world in 5 minutes. So let's do 5 minutes of tapping, and we won't be able to solve the world, but hopefully if you tap along with us, you will feel a little bit calmer, a little bit lighter, and a little bit easier for approaching your meal times. So just tune into the feeling when you think about all this catastrophizing and what it means about you, and rate that on a scale from 0 to 10, and you can start tapping already. Just rate it on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being calm, light and peaceful, and 10 being the worst. And notice where you feel that feeling in your body. And if you don't know, just guess, make it up, absolutely fine. And notice what the sensation is there. And if you don't know, if you did know, what would it be? And let's just start tapping. And if you tap along with me, you agree to take responsibility for your own well-being. And the invitation is to do what we do, say what we say. And if you don't like what we do or say, don't do it. If the words don't quite match how you're feeling, then just change them to match what is right for you. So let's do it. So even though I have a habit of catastrophizing. If I don't get that meal on the table in time, they won't get to bed in time. And then they're going to be tired.
And
it's going to be so hard getting them up.
And
then they won't get to school on time.
And
maybe they're going to get told off again.
Maybe I'll get told off.
Maybe I'll get told off. And I'm so doing my best.
But
it's not good enough.
At
least that's what I'm telling myself. Because I'm not getting it right.
And
I acknowledge how that makes me feel.
And
I'm open to the possibility. Of trying to find some compassion for myself. Just the way I am.
Just the way that I am.
And just the way I'm not.
And just the way that I'm not.
Let's tap through the points. All of this catastrophizing. I've got to get those meals done on time. Because if I don't, they'll be late for bed. And if they're late for bed, I might be too tired to put them to bed.
And
I might lose my patience.
And
then I might feel guilty about it.
And
they'll wake up tired.
And
it will be so hard to get them to school on time. They'll end up being late.
I'll end up being late.
Maybe they'll get told off.
Maybe they'll get told off.
Maybe I'll get told off.
Maybe I'll get told off.
And that just makes me feel like a bad mum.
And that just makes me feel like a bad mum.
And I'm trying so hard to get it right.
And I'm trying so hard to get it right.
But there's so much to think about.
But there's so much to think about.
And my husband doesn't do any of that thinking.
And my husband doesn't do any of that thinking.
He doesn't even know how.
He doesn't even know how.
I don't mean that just like in the planning.
It's so true.
In the planning way, I'm sure he knows how to think brilliantly, but when it comes to that kind of thinking, and it's all on me.
And it's all on me.
And it feels like such an overwhelming responsibility.
I feel it's such an overwhelming responsibility.
Such a burden.
Such a burden.
And if only I could get mealtimes right.
And if only I could get mealtimes right.
Then I wouldn't have any of this problem.
Then I wouldn't have any of this problem.
And maybe I still would.
Maybe I still would.
Maybe it's not all about mealtimes.
Maybe it's not all about mealtimes.
And maybe it's nothing to do with mealtimes.
And maybe it's nothing to do with mealtimes.
Maybe it's everything to do with me.
Maybe it's everything to do with me.
And how I approach this situation.
And how I approach the situation.
I approach it with all of my background.
I approach it with all of my background.
Everything I've learned about being a parent.
Everything I've learned about being a parent.
From my own childhood.
From my own childhood.
From TV.
From TV.
From fairy tales.
From fairy tales.
And how it should be.
And how it should be.
At least according to our culture.
At least according to our culture.
And I put so much pressure on myself.
And I put so much pressure on myself.
To get it right.
To get it right.
And that's so hard.
And that's so hard.
And maybe I'm okay just as I am.
And maybe I'm okay just as I am.
Even with all my imperfections.
Even with all my imperfections.
Even if I don't get the meal on the table on time.
Even if I don't get the meal on the table on time.
Even if I don't get the kids to bed on time.
Even if I don't get the kids to bed on time.
Or to school on time.
Or to school on time.
It's not what happens.
It's not what happens.
It's what I tell myself about what happens.
It's what I tell myself about what happens.
So I'm open to the possibility.
So I'm open to the possibility.
Of finding some compassion.
Finding some compassion.
Even if that's an unfamiliar word.
Even if that's an unfamiliar word.
In my personal dictionary.
In my personal dictionary.
I wonder what I'd be telling myself.
I wonder what I'd be telling myself.
If I were able to have compassion for myself.
If I was able to have compassion with myself.
I wonder what I'd tell my best friend.
I wonder what I'd tell my best friend.
If she was going through that.
If she was going through that.
I'd probably be so much kinder.
I'd probably be so much kinder.
To her than I am to me.
Than I am to her than I am to me.
So I wonder how I can bring a little bit more kindness.
So I wonder how I can bring a bit more kindness.
Into myself and my situation.
Into myself and my situation.
I wouldn't treat others like I treat myself.
I wouldn't treat others like I treat myself.
I wouldn't expect them to be perfect.
I wouldn't expect them to be perfect.
But somehow I do expect myself to be.
But somehow I do expect myself to be.
I have all these high standards for myself.
All these high standards for myself.
And maybe it's time to soften that.
And maybe it's time to soften that.
I'm open to the possibility.
I'm open to the possibility
Of finding a bit more compassion.
of finding a bit more compassion
For myself.
for myself,
My situation.
my situation,
My children.
my children,
My husband.
my husband,
And our relationships.
and our relationships.
Because the the less attached I am to everything being perfect.
Because the less attached I am to everything being perfect,
The more I can flow.
the more I can flow,
The more I can let go of expectations.
the more I can let go of expectations
Of having all family members
of having all family members
sitting at the table at the same time.
sitting at the table at the same time.
The more I can release that disappointment.
The more I can release that disappointment.
When it doesn't go the way I want it to go.
When it doesn't go the way I want it to go.
The easier it will be for all of us.
The easier it will be for all of us.
And the calmer and more relaxed I am.
And the calmer and more relaxed I am.
The calmer and more relaxed my children will be.
The calmer and more relaxed my children will be.
It starts with me.
It starts with me. It does.
Yeah. So I wonder what I can do today.
So I wonder what I can do today.
To bring a little bit more ease.
To bring a little bit more ease.
Maybe even a little bit more fun.
Maybe even a little bit more fun.
And lightness.
And lightness.
Into the situation.
Into the situation.
I wonder what tiny little step.
I wonder what tiny little steps
I can take right now.
I can take right now.
To ease my situation.
To ease my situation.
And if that step seems too big.
And if that step feels too big.
I can break it down even further.
I can break it down even further.
And if nothing comes to mind.
And if nothing comes to mind.
That's okay too.
That's okay too.
So I'm bringing even more compassion.
So I'm bringing even more compassion.
And kindness to myself.
And kindness to myself.
With my situation just the way it is.
With my situation just the way it is.
And I'm infusing into my mealtime today.
And I'm infusing into my mealtime today.
Calmness.
Calmness.
Lightness.
Lightness.
Flow.
Flow.
Fun.
Fun.
Ease.
Ease.
Peace.
Peace.
Appreciation.
Appreciation.
Laughter.
Laughter.
Connection with my children.
Connection with my children.
Knowing and trusting that there's more than enough time.
More than trusting that there's more than enough time.
Maybe time can feel elastic for me.
Maybe time can feel elastic for me.
Today and every day.
Day and every day.
That's what I'm choosing for myself.
That's what I'm choosing for myself.
And I bring magic and miracles.
And I bring magic and miracles.
Into this meal and every mealtime.
Into this meal and every mealtime.
And just put your hands in the centre of your chest and say transform and take a deep breath.
Transform.
So one of three things will have happened when you think about the emotion that you started with. It will either have gone up, it will have stayed the same, or it will have gone down. Now, I really hope it's gone down. If it's stayed the same, write in the comments, and there's lots of tips and tricks with EFT that you can do that can really change that, but that's beyond what I can do on the video. If it's gone up, don't worry, it's probably because we've brought to the surface loads of issues and that you haven't been thinking about, and it can feel a little bit worse. If that's the case, don't worry, just go to the beginning of the tapping, repeat it, and it will dissolve and diffuse. Now, some signs that EFT has been working are that you might feel lighter, you might feel energized, you might feel heavier or more tired, you might feel tingling. So any of those are signs that the energy is shifting. So, Tricia, I just wondered if you've experienced any difference. I know that isn't necessarily your issue right now because it's a past issue, but I just wondered how that felt.
I just always feel like after done EFT, I always just feel like lighter. I always just feel like I'm able to, like, as you say, like laugh more and just be much more rational. It's so good at just engaging your rational brain. So I think you're able to engage your rational thought and your rational thinking. Well, thought thinking, same thing. But just been able just to, I just, as we were doing that, I was able to, I could feel myself smiling, I could feel myself laughing. I could feel myself feeling, much, seeing how ridiculous some of our thoughts are, really. Yeah, it's always really powerful.
Oh, good. I'm really happy. And if you've enjoyed this, then please do share this video with other people who you think could benefit, because I know there are so many mums out there struggling with these kind of issues. Let's see, went up, then shifted, cognitive shift. It is what it is, and then down. Amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Bonita. That's absolutely great. So if people want to know more about you, Tricia, where can they find you?
Super easy. triciamurray.co.uk is my website, or Tricia Murray UK on Instagram. So that's the two places to find me.
Fantastic. So please do look out for Tricia. She specialises in anxiety. She's a mum, so she knows what it's like being a mum. And
thank you so much, Tamara. Thank you for inviting me today. So it's been really nice to spend time.
So much for coming. And if you want to know more about my book, Frazzled to Fabulous, no, you can see on that side, then check it out. It's on Amazon and frazzledtofabulous.com. So thank you so much, Tricia. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.